and welcome to this month's Talking Tactics. Today I'm half your host, Dave Polikoff, with my boy, Sam Villani. And as we like to say, in the biz, RJ's on assignment. His wife said, you will take me out and buy me a new car or something of that nature. It may have gone down like that. I don't know. But anyway, Sam, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, hopefully Bryan will clear a run and be able to hop on here shortly. But we're bringing on Bryan Riley, who has a breadth of experience in both career and volunteer settings as both a chief officer and company officer. But what we wanted to talk to him about tonight was his company officer leadership style and how he does it in a busy urban engine company. He's who I chose when I was asked to bump up as a battalion chief. He's who I chose to run one engine for me, and Chief Davis gave me the pick, or gave me the option to pick. So I wanted to have him on tonight because I think the world of him. I think his officership style is strong. He's really I think he can do it all, but he's a really engine-centric guy in Montgomery County, and is very well known for how well he does on the fire ground and on the training ground with his companies.
Yeah, and obviously I've known Bryan, somebody that we've both known for a long time. Bryan is a solid guy. And the reason why we're talking about Bryan and he's not on here is because he's actually working today, and he's working in a busy company, so he's on a run right now. So if he comes into the green room, we'll let him in. But it is a great topic that we need to dig into, the stuff that we talked about offline. You know, being an officer in a busy company, and I tell you, it can be intimidating when you are a newly promoted officer, and maybe you came from a different part of your borough, or your jurisdiction, your township, or your county, the city, whatever. Maybe you weren't at a busy place and you're moving to a busy place, and it has its challenges, but it can be intimidating. I remember, being, a 18-year-old kid getting hired and going from Burtonsville in Montgomery County, which was kind of like a one-horse town at the time. It's not anymore. And then going to downtown Silver Spring in the heart of one engine and in the heart of the 1st Battalion. And it was intimidating. It's like not to take away from Chief Norman, but it was like walking with giants, which is the name of his new book. Going down there, knowing that every time my parents drove to Silver Spring and we went past Station 1, I was always like, oh, they're going to get a run, because you'd always hear them on the scanner that they're going to run a call. And then, fast forward a handful of years, and, now I'm a firefighter, kid. And so it was intimidating being with those guys. But, you prove yourself right away that you're capable, but you also are, keep your mouth shut and you want to learn. And I think that plays into, as an officer, when you get promoted and you go to a busy place that has a reputation, and you've got some solid firefighters that are in there, you got to kind of have to go in there as you're the F and G. Even though you have the rank, you have to have the humility of, these guys have been here a while. Let's listen to see what's going on. Let's ask some questions. It's okay not to know everything. We've said that 1,000 times on this show. And you're going to learn, but have the humility to absorb it and to ask questions, and don't go in there like, I'm the officer, so I have to know everything. It can be intimidating. So, and you did the same thing. I mean, you went from, moving into the 1st Battalion from station to station, the busy station. So, as that new lieutenant, moving into a busy house, going from firefighter to lieutenant, what are some of the things that maybe you bumped up against? And then what, as a battalion chief now, you're seeing some of these newer officers coming in. What are they bumping up against, and how are we solving any issues that they might have? Or what can we give them, the tools to give them to help solve these issues?
Yeah, so we got and we did not get thrown to the wolves. I'm telling you, we had great mentoring in the firehouse. I felt like I was very well prepared to be a company officer. When I was a master firefighter, we still bumped up the rod as a lieutenant on a regular basis. And I got a lot of experience thanks to now Captain Falcon. Julio kind of took me under his wing and put me in some challenging spots in training, and then I also on the fire ground. So I felt well prepared. It was informal. Now we have this formal process, which I think is really good. We have that company officer leadership academy that some top-notch folks put on. Some of my favorite people put this thing on. I'm like, wow, it's pretty awesome to see the best the people that you feel are the best in the game putting on a program that's going to prepare our next company officers, our next leaders. So we're fortunate to have that program. As you very well know, we just went through it last week. Actually, the bump up class for battalion chief. I got to present the battalion command platform at that. That was pretty cool. But yeah, it's being a new officer. These days you have the company officer leadership academy, chief masters, Jason. You know Jason very well. He's got the mentorship back up and running for those folks. So I feel like we give them a lot of we give them as much as we can, given the constraints we have. We give them a pretty decent amount to where I think day one they're not completely shell shocked. And, some of the things we teach them in there, you have to rely on your folks. That crew resource management is real. I would always tell the folks at one engine, because especially at night, you're just smoked. You're exhausted. If you see something I don't see, let me know, because I may be in the front of this thing, but I don't see it all. And especially at 2 or 3 in the morning when we've yet to hit the bed. It was super important to rely on those folks. And we all worked at the same firehouse and knew the area very well together. So think of how crucial it is for that new float officer coming in they really have to, you really have to throw your trust at people that are already in that firehouse and that know how that firehouse runs.
You said a couple things I'm going to touch on. You talked about mentors. Being an 18-year-old kid coming into a new firehouse, I didn't know what a mentor was. I didn't know anything about that stuff. But I was fortunate because I had a lot of seasoned guys that had volunteered in busy departments in other jurisdictions that were now working at Silver Spring. And one of the guys that took me under their wing was RJ, not to be confused with RJ, Bobby Evans. His son's now on the job in Montgomery County. But
Station
Bobby,
commander.
Right. RJ from one engine, he took me under his wing and just showed me a ton of stuff. I mean, the dude was phenomenal with pumps, truck work, even on the EMS side. He was a technician when I got there, so he didn't have to ride the ambulance that much. But we run a ton of medical locals down there. But I was so fortunate that even though he's 11 years older than I am, he took me under his wing and kind of showed me the ropes of Silver Spring. That's where he was for his whole career, and just took the time to show me how the engine company worked in Silver Spring, showed me how the truck company worked down there, showed me how to be a career guy. I mean, you going from volunteer to a career, it is different. And what the responsibilities were and what I needed to study and books and maps and things like that. I always made sure that I was set on the right path. So never forgot that, and still keep in touch with him. Probably not as much as I should, but he taught me a ton of stuff. That's all the guys that were down there taught me a ton of stuff. And it's important. So any senior guys that are out there listening, don't be afraid to step up and take some of these young guys and gals under your wings. They're looking for that, but they probably don't know how to say it. So I was fortunate with that. One of the other things that you talked about was the float officers, and I've had conversations with a bunch of people about just it's a double-edged sword to be a float officer, and even RJ's touched on it. He floated for almost 4 years before he got his spot now. In Frederick, they prepare you to be an officer. They have officer training stuff and leadership and things like that. So, Frank Malta and the crew at the training academy in Frederick do a really good job putting that program together and spinning these guys up as much as you can to be ready. But being that float officer, I mean, you want to talk about it's like I said, it's a double-edged sword. It's really cool because you are seeing a bunch of different stations. You're running a bunch of different calls, a bunch of different people, but you really don't have that responsibility of as their boss. So you're just their boss for the substitute teacher syndrome. But But on the downside of it is that you're riding the front seat and, of a fire engine or a ladder truck that you don't know, probably an area you're not familiar with. And what's always made it fun is when we used to work overtime and they detail us to the 5th Battalion or something like that, and you look over and your driver, he's detailed in too. He doesn't know where the hell he's going, and the dude riding in the back is new. So it was just like, roll the dice. Hopefully we're going to be in the map books pretty quick. But I think that being a float officer, if you embrace that, it'll make you sharp. It'll make you be able to look things up on the map real quick. It'll help you with your decision making, especially that rapid prime decision making model of being able to make quick decisions on the fly based with that little bit of information, because you're working with people you don't know in an area you're not familiar with on an apparatus that you haven't ridden. And, I didn't float. I worked a ton of overtime, but I didn't float. Did you float when you were a lieutenant or a captain before you got your permanent spot? So speak to a little bit about that, because I know RJ's talked about it, but what was it like for you?
I loved it. I would want to do it now. I would want to do it now, but when I was single and even when I was, newly married, no, I guess I was done floating when we got hitched. But anyway, I loved it because I got to see everybody, and me, I'm an extra social fella, and I got to see everybody. A lot of the folks I saw in the different firehouses, like everybody I hung out with in Baltimore didn't work at the same firehouse, so I'd see like a couple of the guys I was regularly carrying on with. At this station or that station, and working under Chief Davis, you had kind of like a primary firehouse you were responsible for as a float officer, and I had Burtonsville for a little while, and I loved it. I had such a blast up there. There were a lot of, as you very well know, there were some challenging times up there, just with changes and everything else. But I loved it up there. They treated me very well up there. I went to some good fires with those folks. And a lot of those folks that were volunteers there have gone on to do tremendous things, even in our organization, which is pretty awesome. So I loved it. I loved being a fly. I didn't mind living out of my vehicle. I didn't mind going to this firehouse or that fire. They shift you out to like Poolsville. I just never made it to Poolsville ever. So you got to go see some place you hadn't been before, because that was your excuse to get out and see the area. Okay, they say Fisher Avenue. I want to know. Where is that split? Not that I don't think Fisher Avenue splits, but anyway, so those places you didn't end up at on a regular basis. It gave you the opportunity to get out there and check out the place, maybe get some good food, that kind of thing. So I enjoyed it, man. I loved the entire time I floated.
I think the closest that I came to floating was when I got promoted to battalion chief. And Chief Lore at the time, he was the operations chief. He's like, congratulations, you've been promoted. Your assignment's going to be you're going to be the Tuesday, Friday relief chief in battalion 1 and 4. And I'm like, all right, what does that mean? And he says, well, you're going to be working on Tuesday and Friday. And I'm like, well, what shift? He's like, and I know I've told this story before. He's like, Tuesday and Friday. You work Tuesday and Friday in the 1st Battalion and in the 4th Battalion. I said, okay. I said, gears are turning in my head. I'm trying to, I've never heard of it. I was 24/48 my entire career. And he's like, Dave, you work Tuesday and then you work Friday. And then you don't come back to work until next Tuesday. And I'm like, oh, does anybody else know about this shift? Because it sounds like it's a treat. And he said they don't usually put new people on that, but nobody else wanted it. So for 4 years, I floated in the two busiest battalions in the county between the 1st and the 4th. I was the Kelly Killer is what they called me. But it took, I did some time at Station 18, as a technician in the 4th Battalion, and very busy station. And then obviously in the 1st Battalion, I did quite a bit of time there, a little bit of time in the 3rd Battalion. So I knew the area in the 1st Battalion. I just didn't have to worry about anything. I knew where I was going. The 4th Battalion, I knew most of the 4th Battalion, but, when you start getting down into downtown Kensington and the Fives area and all that, some of those streets. But
getting them water maps.
it was, it definitely put me on my feet. It really perked me up where, you had to be on your game, especially when you're running between the first and the fourth. When I was in the 4th Battalion and Mark Davis is working in the first, and they tap out a 18 box, which is right on the cusp of the 1st Battalion coming from Aspen Hill. So it's like a foot race, and he'd always get me in there. But it was, you had to be on your toes. You needed to know those splits. So I think that really honed my skills of driving, because we don't have aids. So we're driving by ourselves, knowing that area, really needing to get in there and knowing the area, and then, getting yourself a good spot. And I tell people, I said, they don't make our vehicles 4-wheel drive for a reason. You know what I mean? So I'll cut through some yards and whatnot, bump some mailboxes out of the way, but, or not mailboxes.
I've witnessed it.
Trash cans.
I've witnessed it.
But I did think that made me a stronger battalion chief before I, took my permanent spot at the 1st Battalion. So I agree with you. I think it can be a little intimidating, but I got to see, I worked through all 3 shifts in 2 of the busiest battalions. So I got to see like almost 10% of the workforce. And it got to the point where I got really good with those guys, and they appreciated me being there because they know I'd let them do their job as long as they were feeding me good information. But going back to floating, like I said, I worked a ton of overtime, and I remember one call in particular. I was detailed. Was it detail? I think I was working overtime, or it was either that or detail to Station 8. So I'm going from one engine to Station 8, and I'm riding the ambulance, of course. Pat Stakeham's driving me on the ambulance. I didn't know Pat at the time. And they tap out a 29 box for observation, which was right across the street from their firehouse. Well, their ambulance was out on a call, so our ambulance was first due. So Pat knew where he was going. And they had a pretty good fire. And those guys made a mistake, thought it was a standpipe building, and it wasn't. And so we pull up in the ambulance, and they're yelling back, "Hey, we need a leader line up in here because we don't have a standpipe building." So I'm looking at Pat, and I'm thinking, they're not getting any fire until we get a line up there. And lo and behold, we pulled the 3-inch line and met the fire chief from Station 29. He's like, "Dave, we're out of air. Follow this line all the way down." So Pat Stakem and I got all of that fire. So that was a good time to be detailed out, right? That's the good time it was for riding the ambulance. But it's just one of those things that didn't know the area at all. Luckily, Pat did, and he was working at 8, and we were good. So, Bryan, thanks for showing up on time as usual.
Hey, thanks for the invite, guys.
He's running on his Southern Maryland time, apparently. So, everybody, this is Bryan Riley.
Negative. It's a combo,
so we started
baby,
the conversation what we had talked about. We were going to talk about riding the front seat, being the new officer, and all that kind of stuff. But we kind of gave you an introduction, said that that you've got a handful of years on the job, and that
handful.
And that
I
you
didn't
had to
say it that way, Dave.
For Sam Villani to get you into the first
he had
battalion.
a myriad of experience in both career and volunteer settings as both a chief officer and a company officer. That's how I said it, Dave. See,
but he did.
Dave's
He did say you had
you.
to beg and bribe to get to the 1st Battalion, and he's still regretting it.
I wanted to tell a story kicking off when we were taught down there that one time, that symposium, and we were on break, and we hopped in the buggy with him and took in that run. That was so awesome.
Oh, yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah. That
was so cool, man.
But, Bryan, welcome to the show. So we were just talking about being a float officer, and how I'd always said I never had to float. Sam did. I know you did some float time, and how it's a double-edged sword. You get to see a lot of the county. It really hones in on your decision-making skills because you're making decisions in areas that you're not familiar with. God forbid you have a detailed driver that day. So how do you manage, and we're just going to jump right back into it. How do you manage, when you were floating? I mean, obviously now you're assigned in the 1st, but when you're floating, how did you manage those issues when it came to floating, going from different stations where you've been assigned to a specific area for most of your career? You get promoted to lieutenant, next thing you know, you're living out your car.
Yeah. So when I got promoted to the float pool, I switched shifts, went to C shift. I'd never worked on C shift, never been assigned to C shift. And then I went to the 4th Battalion, which I never worked in the 4th Battalion, never assigned to the 4th Battalion. So for me, that was that was a big shakeup and a big change for me. Not knowing the people, right? Because obviously this department we work for here is fairly large. So you don't know everybody. And someday you'll walk in the door and nobody knows you, right? Nobody knows that you're the boss, you're the lieutenant. Hey, guy walking through the door, you mind catching me on the ambulance? I don't think I can do that yet, right? Like I'm supposed to be catching the officer, right? But right, but that's the reality, right? You're walking into a place that nobody knows you. Yeah, I'm sure they've heard your name. They saw it on a bulletin. Yeah, you got promoted. But they, like I said, we're a pretty big department now. 1,300 members, and that's a big thing. And then you know trusting some of the people, because you're putting basically everything on maybe a driver, maybe the master. You're hoping that the driver that is there that day is assigned to that firehouse and is the normal driver, because let's face it, summertime, people take leave, people are off, and you get a detailed driver that's not from that fire station, that's not from around there, and now you and him are both looking at each other like, left or right out of the firehouse, because I have no idea. So it takes a lot.
Look for the column.
Right. And I will say one thing. I feel it does make you better at this job, because it does put you kind of behind. It makes you learn how to read map books. It makes you pay attention and listen to what everything else is going on around you, because you truly don't know where you are sometimes and where you are pulling in this block, let's say, for a box alarm, just because you have no idea. This is a big county. So I think it really does make you better, right? You're a substitute teacher. Yes, you're not solving the problems in 24 hours at each firehouse that you go to, right? We know that, but you're handling what you need to handle for that day-to-day basis.
To bring in what Bryan says, he's right that especially if you're a float officer and you floated through the 3rd and the 5th battalion, or you were assigned there, and next thing you know, you're getting promoted and you're put down in the 1st battalion, and you're running out of 1 engine, or you're running out of 2, and or any of the stations inside the beltway, and it's like the tone's hit. You need to know if you're going left or right, because that's the difference between 1st and 4th due. It's that competitive, it's that tight down there, and so there's a stress factor that goes with being that float officer, not being familiar with the company or that station that you're riding at that day, and it is stressful. And I have sympathy for those officers, but at the end of the day, we have to figure out a way to do that. And, one of the things that I used to do when if I was working overtime, whatever, I'd get in the front seat of whatever piece of apparatus that I was riding that day. And I'd get everything set up, get the maps opened up, at least to the index right away. So, especially if they have speed indexes or whatever, that gives you the left or the rights real quick. I'd get it opened up into those. I'd make sure the NBC's set up, make sure my radio's ready to go. Everything's right there. So I don't have to think about those things and can really concentrate on, getting us to the right place. And, it's a whole another layer of complexity when you look across the doghouse and the driver that's over there is probably from a different battalion as well. They're working overtime. So they're like, I don't know.
I am sure that Bryan can give just as many horror stories, not horror stories, but showing up at a firehouse. You're a float lieutenant. You're never even in this battalion. You haven't worked in this firehouse probably since you were checked off as an engine driver, and you did that little tour. And you look over, and it's a brand new person who they were already expressing concerns that there might be some issues. And then the person behind me had just come off disability and probably should have stayed on disability. And I was like, I'm alone. I'm all alone. We ran an elevator run and we did not need him. I called for Tower 51.
Yeah.
Help, fellas.
Yeah. And I tell you, one big thing I see is, and one big tip that I tell some of these newer guys is, speaking of map book, have the map book opened up and know what page the firehouse sits on, right? So if that first call comes out and it's the house on fire right next to the firehouse or across the street, right? You you know what map page you're going to. Everything is right there. You know where the hydrants are, but you need to know that immediately. You know, like what map sits the firehouse, right? And within a block or two, right? Like I know here at Company One, we have what's called the home screen. And basically it's a 5 block radius around this firehouse, and it's on the outside of the cover, and it's on the very first page that you turn to, and that basically has everything around this area. You're there, right? Because let's face it, it's 2 seconds and you're on the scene, really, as soon as you pull out a firehouse, right?
I love it. Oh man, I miss that.
Yeah,
I
I
miss
tell you
it.
what, Brian, that is important for people to understand. Is where does your firehouse sit, and what are the splits left and right? You know, so they bang out an address on Flower Avenue or on, you know, whatever. You know, am I going left or am I going right?
Yeah.
When I'm pulling out of the firehouse, it and having it on that map, preloading that, just whatever you can do to give yourself that little bit of an advantage to being able to tell the driver, hey, left, and then 3 streets down, we're going to take a right. That'll get you where you need to be. So I can get my boots on, or, you know, because we're supposed to already be dressed before we get into
Yeah.
fire apparatus, of
Yeah,
course.
because I mean,
But
let's be
you know,
let's be real, right? Yes, we are an urban environment, you could say, right? We have somewhat of a city setup, but we're not a city truly department where you have hydrants on every corner. And I know that I can go down this block and there's a hydrant here, here, and here, right? That's not realistic in our case. You know, our fire hydrants are sporadic, but you know, you got to make it work.
although there are hydrants on every corner in 1 and 2's area.
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah, for the most part.
They're not on every corner and in the middle of every block like
No,
they are
Right.
in all other places.
nope,
Exactly.
Which,
nope,
God
not
bless,
at all.
man. Wow. To not
So
have
what
that
are some of
problem
the
be pretty
things we
awesome.
were moving into some more of the admin stuff? Because, you know, running fire calls, that's, you know, 5-10% of what we do. A lot of the stuff, like you said, for 24 hours, you ain't fixing all the problems that are there, but
Yeah.
recognizing that when you step in there are some problems that probably, you know, you can't let go. You know, you can't say,
Right.
oh, well, this is the captain's next shift's problem. There are some things that you need to hit right then and there. How are you dealing with that? You know, what advice are you giving to a new lieutenant that's popping in from a firefighter into a lieutenant that's walking into a situation where, like, this ain't right? You know, this may
Yeah.
have been going on for a while. Obviously, it has been, but today it ain't right. And I can give you some stories, you know, when you're done, of some of the things that happened with me and how I dealt with it.
Yeah. So I will say that being a young, new officer in the fire department can be challenging, right? Because you have some senior people that potentially will push those little buttons of yours and force you to play a hand, right? I was fortunate enough that I had a lot of people on that Rolodex, right? That my phone a friend, right? That, hey, is this something, how can I deal with this, right? How should I deal with this issue? Or after I dealt with the issue, hey, do you think I handled this in the right direction? Right? Like I have a captain has his guy detailed into the station that I'm in, and he wants him checked off on the engine at this detailed firehouse, and he's questioning why he is not riding on the engine, getting engine driver training. And I, I said, well, if it was that important to you to get him engine driver training, why is he not at his firehouse getting the engine driver training, right? Why is he not detailed and sitting in his firehouse with his officer and his master? He's the detailed person. Why is this the people from this own station here? Should they have to go ride this other unit and allow him to ride the line today because he's doing engine driver training, not even at his station? That, to me, that just doesn't make sense, right? And I had a conversation with a captain as a lieutenant, and we had a heart to heart, and he brought it to the battalion chief, and the battalion chief called me and said, "You're fine with what you did, and it is what it is," but you're going to have that sometimes, that some people are going to try to push you over, and you're just going to have to stand your ground too sometimes, and
Yeah,
this is how
100%.
it's got to be.
That's a weak officer there to try to pawn his issues, and I can tell you exactly what he was trying to do is he didn't want to be the bad guy having to detail somebody senior out of his firehouse who's going to be mad at the captain, so he's going to detail the guy that's supposed to go out. No, man. That's a phone call to scheduling. Hey, for the next 3 shifts, 5 shifts, firefighter Schmuckatelli's not being detailed out. He's on a non-detail status. And then you tell your shift, hey, you guys are going to have to take the hit while this guy gets checked out of drive. He's every bit as important as the rest of us. He needs to get his skills too. But that's a weak officer that was afraid to give somebody bad news, and he's going to pawn it off on you. That's bullshit. I remember as a new captain, I was working overtime in the station I was assigned to, but another shift, and we ran an automatic home fire alarm. 99.9% of the time, they're all BS. So I get on the scene, full PPE, SCBA, getting out. I turn around, and the person riding in the back gets out in their uniform. That's it. I'm like, what are you doing? And he looked at me. I said, get your shit on. You better meet me by the door by the time I finish my 360. And you come back, and they were, shuffling to get their gear on, and it ended up being BS or malfunctioning detector or whatever. So we get back, and they kind of chuckle, and they go, "Yeah, well, we don't get dressed on automatic home fire alarms." I said, for the next 7 hours that I'm working here, you will, mark my word. And it's like, I don't care what your officer puts up with. That's not what I'm going to put up with. When I leave, you can do whatever you want. But, my advice to you is, we're firemen. Be ready. Everything we run is a fire till we say it isn't, even if it's an unconscious person. Maybe they're unconscious because the room's on fire,
Right.
What about you, Sam? Running a sick person. Next thing you know, they're going in there, 150 parts per million, and people are passed
CO
out.
call we had that morning on Bayfield. Bayfield? Yeah.
It was off of University Boulevard. Mm-hmm. Anyway, but you're right, Brian, and good for you to stand your ground. As a lieutenant, you're telling a captain, "Hey, man, do your job." And I'm not going to make my guys take a hit because you're too afraid to be an officer. But good for you.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, do the right thing, right? I try to tell that to a lot of people, right? At the end of the day, do the right thing, even if it's not the most popular, right? You're going to have to make some decisions. You might hurt some feelings, but do the right thing. It's what we should be doing every single day, right? The right thing for everybody.
And I know our conversations always, it kind of, we start talking about decision making and stuff like that. There's a big topic that I had when I was working in Montgomery County. Why aren't we making decisions? And I know you guys have the Leadership Academy, have your Officers Academy now. I talked to crap, I can't remember who it was, but you guys have just developed this officership academy you're running your people through, and it's actually pretty robust. And I think that's awesome. You learn along the way of how to make decisions, and by sometimes making bad decisions, and you learn from that and whatnot. What's helped you, Brian? Moving up through the ranks and making decisions now. Full disclosure, obviously, you've been a long-time volunteer at a fairly busy house in Southern Maryland. So you had that decision-making model already in the back of your head, even though, you're not in an urban environment in Southern Maryland. You're in a busy department, but not like it is in Tacoma or One Engine. But you're still seeing a house fire as a house fire, and those things get put in the back of your head. What are you passing on to these younger guys that are, sitting for the test and going to have to make decisions, and how do you deal with that when they make a wrong decision, and how do you help them to kind of make the right decisions?
Yeah, so I would say number one, right? Pay attention. Pay attention to your officer. Pay attention to the other officers. Pay attention to the master fireman in the firehouse, right? Like, pay attention to everybody. What are they doing, right? You're going to learn some things that they're doing right, and you're going to learn some things they do wrong, right? And that's okay. That's how we learn. But But you have to watch others, because even taking something simple as fire alarms, right? How many times is anybody in the fire service taking a class on fire alarm systems, how to reset a fire alarm? Something simple as that, right? A pull station, right? How many times are you taught how to reset a pull station? If you work in a rural area, you might never do that throughout your career. Reset a pull station, and then you go downtown Silver Spring, and guess what you get to do all day? Reset fire alarms, right? In Company 6's area, reset a fire alarm
You're
in
gonna learn.
Bethesda. Right.
You're gonna learn.
So that's the thing, right? Like, you have to pay attention. You have to watch others. You have to learn from that knowledge and experience, and listen to what these people have to offer you, because we don't know it all. No fresh lieutenant, no fresh captain, even a fresh battalion chief is going to go out there and say they know all this stuff, right? Because if they are saying that, I'm probably not going to want to work around them, right? That's kind of scary. But this is the way we learn, is watching others. The after action reports, right? Learn, what did they do right? What did they do wrong? How do they improve? Every morning at lineup, I discuss some type of fire history, right? Today's date in history, or tomorrow in history, or yesterday in history, right? So, like, tomorrow is obviously the Boston fire, and the Father's Day fire in New York City, right? So we discuss those things. What happened? What occurred that day? What caused this? That's how I think we get better, and we continue to learn about this job, right? Because let's face it, this job can kill you. It still is a dangerous job, and we need to continue to learn as much as we can about this job to make ourselves better. So I always tell people, don't stop learning, right? Don't stop listening to podcasts. Don't stop going to seminars. Don't stop reading. It's okay to watch some YouTube videos, right? Pay attention. Not everybody is making that right decision on the scene, because I know I haven't been to that perfect fire ground yet where nothing went wrong. Um, these are the way we learn from each other, in my opinion, right? So pay attention, keep your eyes open, listen, ask questions. Hey, Cap, why did you do that? Hey, Chief, why were you asking me to go here? Right? Or why were you asking or looking for me to answer with this question that you gave me? Why? Is there something going on that I don't know about? So that, I would say that's probably one of the biggest things, right? Is paying attention and watching those other guys and how they do it, right? And like I said at the beginning, some people are going to do it right, and some people are going to do it wrong, but you're going to learn on both ends of it.
What about you, Sam? We talk
Yeah.
a lot about hot washes and things like that. I think that's a great learning opportunity. What are some of the things you discussed, as a battalion chief and as a captain, when you had your hot washes, and what did you want to make sure that your newer people understood? I liked what Bryan said about, ask questions. We always tell our rookies, shut up, but they need to ask questions, and they need to understand what the why is. They're going to ask that question. But how did you handle your hot washes, and what kind of stuff did you try to make sure you impressed upon the new people and the senior people?
Yeah, as a company officer, any tailboard talk or whatever we had after the incident, usually I'd have obviously entire companies there. We're talking about it, and if there was an error on something didn't go right, something didn't go as planned, whatever, we talked about it as a group. And if we had let's say we had a rookie there and we were trying to get them straight, I'd use somebody that I knew that they were maybe it's the person that I lined them up to be their mentor, right? Somebody is going to work with them individually so they're not overwhelmed. I've seen it before, like where I've not jumped down anybody's throat, but you have somebody brand new and you kind of get frustrated with them, and it shuts them down, and you don't want to do that. It's again, I was talking to somebody about this recently, like the change in generations and how nothing stays the same. And we can bitch about it, or we can embrace it and learn from it, and learn how to basically, we veterans learn how to best prepare and teach these folks. So we get the best product, the best firefighter, and not spend so much time wasted hammering them because they learn differently than we do or think differently than we do. It's their reality is their reality. And I think the biggest challenge in the American fire service in the past 20 years is having to adapt to a completely different way. And I'm sure our fathers' generations probably had to do the same thing at one point. So we're at that crossroads. So it's important to get buy-in from your entire company, and that's the way it works if you develop a good shift. But you want that person that's maybe closest to that rookie. Maybe they're just out of the last class and they know all the, they just got done a whole round of it. And it's real easy to get by in that way with a new person if you show them that, hey, listen, I'm the captain, but I trust every one of these folks in this firehouse to teach you exactly what we need to do because they all know it. And you don't need me to tell you. What you need me to do is make sure you have everything you need to be successful in doing it, And that really, you talk about kicking some piss and vinegar into somebody, man. It really does. You hype them up a little bit and let them know we got you. We got you, and you're with some of the. I always said that the best firehouse. What was the best shift you were ever on? The shift you're on now, right? I always love that when people said that, and it's the truth, man. You go in there, this is my spot now. Where do I get jumped in? I'm in. Let's go. So,
got to make the best of where you are, and if it's not the best, then you make it that way. You work at making it good, whether you're setting an example or, hey, I don't agree with what those guys are doing or how they're handling that, but I'm going to do this every time. This is what I think is the right thing. Doing the right thing is contagious, and you'll see people start to pick that up a little bit, especially the officer. If the officer's not doing what they know they should be doing, but you are, it's going to be like, hey, why is your rookie doing the right thing, but you look like a bag of turds? That's going to get that's a good motivator to change. So we got about 20 minutes left, but one of the things that I wanted to talk about, Sam and Bryan, we talked a little bit. It's June. It's Men's Mental Health Month. We've all had to deal with experiences of people that have truly needed help. We do our best to make sure that they don't slip through the cracks. Some people we've had success stories with, some people we haven't had success stories with. But I'm going to go to you, Sam, let you lead this and finish it off because you've had your hands in a lot of stuff to help fellow firefighters to get them what they need. You've been pretty fancy in how you finagle stuff to get them what they need and still make sure that we have the numbers that we need to get the apparatus on the street and whatnot. So let's dig into that a little bit because I think it's important as leaders of the organization, as officers, as chief officers. What are we looking for? And then how can we help our fellow firefighters when they run into an issue? First of all, we got to get them to admit that there's something going on, that you're seeing something. So how do we get all that done?
Yeah, I'll preface this with the fact that our department's taken a really, I think, an active week, like a safety standout approach to mental health this week, and they've been broadcasting it over the radio. There's emails, YouTube videos, discussions in the firehouse, all super awesome stuff. But yeah, these days it's education, and the stigma isn't as pervasive as it once was, but it's still out there. And I tell you, I think I've probably affected more change in the lives of people on the job by telling my story. And not just with mental health, with the cancer stuff, all the stuff we've been through. You get 33 years of doing this, you do a few things, but being able to be humble and talk about it with them and say, hey, listen, I see two therapists. I see one for me and one to sweep the leaves off the roof. A marriage counselor, my wife, and it works. It works wonders. We do that occasionally, and I go to one regularly. I talk about. I take medicine. I tell them that these tools are here. It's darn near free to access them, and it works. It works because at one point in my life, I was in a really dark place for several years, and I wish somebody back then had said to me, "Come on, let's get you somewhere." I don't know how I made it out of it, but I did, and I always, I didn't, it's not like I had this epiphany. I was like, I'll never let somebody, but if I can at all keep somebody from going through what I went through, I'll do it. I'm signing up right away. I don't want anybody to have to feel the way I felt. It was a really bad feeling, and it was because I had a lot of unaddressed things that, as you very well know, are multiplied by this job, and some of the things that we're dealing with are directly from the job. So, yeah, you have to communicate. You have to be honest and open with them about it. We never talked about it before, and now we're open to talk about it, and people, I think we're getting pretty good buy-in.
How about you, Bryan? What are you looking for? As a shift officer, you have people now that are regular to you. I know when I came to work, I was looking every day as a captain and even as a battalion chief. I'd come out in the morning, kind of look around, talk to the captain, make sure everything was good, make sure the captain's good. He can't overlook the captain. What are you doing, Bryan? Are you kind of going on the same thing, just kind of taking a pulse?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things is just talking to your people, right? Having those daily talks, just some communications back and forth, right? Unfortunately, we're not going to pick up on everything, right? It's tough, right? To pick it all up and to really identify it, right? But I think when you talk to your shift mates, you realize things, you pick up on little things, and you notice little things, and that leads to that next discussion. Right? Have a discussion, have a sit down. Hey, what's going on? Right? Is there anything going on? Right? And just leading off. And knowing that it's okay, right? Letting them know that it's okay. But I think that the talking to your people, right? That's big, because look, it's one thing when you talk to your people when you're at work, but it's another thing when you have constant communications, right? On your day off, right? They're going on vacation, right? Understanding that, knowing that, being involved in their life other than the fire department, because that's important, right? Let's face it, we're family, right? I live with these guys a third of my life, so I know a lot about them. They know a lot about me. So I think just talking, right, in general, is the biggest thing. And in my opinion, right? Like I know Sam has a lot of on this side, and we've had some friends that we've talked to, and I love those dudes to death, and and great people, right? And I think it's just talking and letting them know it is okay. It's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
I think that's important, that letting them know that you're available and that you're not judging. And even if it's one of those things where you just you're kind of looking around the kitchen table after lineup's over, somebody's not just a little off. It's perfect. It's well within your rights. Matter of fact, it'd be derelict if you didn't. Hey, can you come in the office for a second? I got to ask you something. So nobody understands what's going on. You shut the door and say, "Hey, man, you okay?" And they might say, "Yeah, man, I'm fine." And I said, "Okay, just a little off. Not what it is. Just want to make sure you're okay. If you need anything, man, come talk to me. But I'm cool. Whatever you need." And it could be just one of those, like, I'm tired, or I just worked overtime, and we got our ass kicked, whatever. But the fact that you put yourself out there, that, hey, I'm here, and if you need something, please come talk to me. I have the door shut and everything's good. And I know, Sam, you did that. You went out of your way to do that for a bunch of people. And we're fortunate in the area that we're in. We have a lot of resources at our fingertips. Just a lot of stuff. We have a mental health professional assigned to Frederick Fire Department. She is, obviously, you guys know who she is. She's the daughter of one of our past chiefs. She's the wife of one of y'all's captains. So she gets the fire service, and she understands, and that's important that they understand what the fire service is. And I know you guys have your team of people there too, but also you have officers and battalion chiefs that care truly care about their people. A lot of people tell you, I take care of my people. It's one thing to say it, but you got to really to show it, and you got to show that you've got a human side to you, and it's not all like, oh, suck it up and leave that shit at home type of thing. Those days are kind of over. Somebody needs help, whatever it is, even if it sounds trivial to you, to them, it's doing something to them, and they need help. And it's not always mental health, drugs and alcohol runs rampant in the fire department. And, I had a technician who's long retired that I know had a drinking problem. And I finally told him, I said, look, here's the deal, buddy. If you come to work one more time and I smell it, we're going to have a problem. I said, you're putting me in a bad spot. I said, if you need help, I'll get you what you need. And what he needed was a particular person that was on the shift to be gone. That person was literally driving him to drink. And
oh boy,
it's a shame that you have somebody that toxic on the shift that does that to you. But I'm telling you, once that person was liberated from the shift, so to say, it's like a 180, man. Dude was like a whole new person. But I think it was and he even told me, he said, I apologize. It'll never happen again. And it didn't. So I think that it's important as officers, chief officers, line officers, fellow firefighters, you keep your eyes on your people, and they're your friends. Third of your life you're spending with them. Your phone numbers, your phone's always turned. My phone's always on 24/7. I know yours is, Sam. Brian, yours probably is too.
Oh yeah.
They can get a hold, and if they got a problem, it's just a phone call. And whether I have to come drive and get you, or a relay of people that we can get you to get taken care of, that's what's going to happen. That's what it's all about. If anybody watching this feels stuck, that they don't feel like they can talk to somebody on the shift, they don't know who to turn to, 988. That's the phone number, 988. If you need to talk to somebody, they will pick up 24/7. It's anonymous. It's free. So, like I've said in a couple other podcasts, the world's better with you in it than not in it. So, take advantage of that. So, all right. So we got about 5 minutes left. I'm not going to bring this conversation down, bumming everybody out, but it is something that's important that we need to talk about. And I hope that your mental health people that are assigned to the departments are taking an active role in talking to the people and putting yourself out there. That's important. But let's finish with a little bit of what's going on down in my old stomping grounds. I kind of miss it down there in the 1st Battalion, running the calls. So any good calls lately that we've run? Anything worth mentioning about? Any good fires? Because I'm not getting that many fires where I am.
Company 216 and 12, they just got a unit citation today for a little fire in Company 2's first due. Small fire. Pulled a guy out, and matter of fact, he was just released from the hospital the other day, evidently. So,
congratulations! I remember listening to that.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. That was back in January. So they're coming around. They're catching up with all the unit citations. So they've been hitting them all up. They had a little fire today up in Germantown. A little kitchen fire today. But yeah, you know how it is down here. It comes and goes, and it's nonstop down here. You know how that is.
I think it's important, what you just said, is that this guy's got a unit citation. We've said it 100 times on this show. I would much rather you give me a pat on the back and say you're a hell of a fireman than a piece of paper or a plaque or whatever. I mean, that's good too that you got recognized, but man, that goes a long way for your officer, your lieutenant or the captain to recognize the firefighters on the shift that they're hell of a fireman. You guys doing a great job. You make me look good. The battalion chief. I mean, I used to tell people all the time, I was like, man, there ain't nothing special about me. They would be like, oh man, you guys, you handle your business down in the 1st Battalion. Your shift is sharp. And I'm like, let's get one thing straight. There ain't nothing special about me. These guys make me look good all the time. And the fact that they flawless, that I don't, just small moves. Ran a fire not too long ago. I was the first one there. I was right down the street from headquarters in Frederick, and it was we did have one trap. They did go in. They made the rescue, but guy succumbed to his injuries. It was probably the first working incident that I ran in charge of, because I don't normally do that. It's not my position. We have battalion chiefs, but it was literally down the street from the firehouse, or down the street from headquarters. And we did the hot wash. I mean, those guys did just a phenomenal job. I mean, the first 3 units on the scene was a ladder truck, a rescue squad, and an assistant chief. Those are the first 3 units on the scene of an outbuilding, a 30 by 60 outbuilding, well involved with one trapped. No water. And there's no hydrants in that particular area. And the engine got on the scene and it just went to work and got that fire knocked back enough they could go in and make the rescue. But when it was all said and done, I wanted to do a hot wash and talk to the guys and say, what'd you do? What'd you see? I couldn't see some of the areas. So they were giving their account. And I'm like, I know there's some things that I could have done better, with this. Luckily, Frank Malta was riding on the truck. He jumped on the truck from the academy. So he got in the vehicle with me. So I asked the guys, I said, anything that you feedback give to me, I welcome it, new county, new people. And one of the guys looks at me and goes, you don't talk on the radio very much. And I looked at him and I said, I'm going to take that as a win. Because I didn't need to. I mean, those guys it was like being back at one engine again. It was about being back at the first battalion, that they were just doing their job and, ironed a couple of things out and they just went to work. And that was one of the things that just always made me proud of where I was. I'm proud of being from the 1st Battalion, and I'm glad that I got volunteered, hired, and retired in the 1st Battalion. But the guys down there, the competition is good competition. And the messing around with each other, the screwing with each other is just good, clean fun. And that they just make the Chiefs look good. I mean, you really don't have to do much. There's definitely no micromanaging going on because they're on it. And a lot of times, if it was a 12 box, something like that, I would be telling those guys, go on the scene, give your own scene report, take the initial command. I'm going to get in a nice little parking spot where I can see everything. I'm going to write all my units down because I trust you guys to be able to run that incident for 5 to 7 minutes without me having to say anything. And then it's just going from there. So good stuff. And, Sam, I know you're in your admin position now, but you get to work a little bit of overtime, I guess. But
this summer I'm going to work it. I'm going to work some field overtime.
But
I'm too busy, man. This headquarters gig and 4 and 7 year old and a wife and 2 cats and everything else, man. I'll tell you what, it's a busy life.
I got you. Bryan, it's good seeing you again. I know I used to give you a hard time because it's out of respect, the stuff that you're doing, in the county as well as what you're doing. I don't know if you're as active as you were down in Southern Maryland as you were, but you were doing some good stuff down there too. And I always remember because you opened your firehouse to us when we were trying to get our rescue squad purchased and all that stuff. So plus it was one of the first places we did our command class down there in Hollywood.
Yeah.
But,
look, like I said at the beginning of the show, Chief Davis asked me to pick somebody to run one engine while I was practicing being a battalion chief. And I already knew. I mean, I trusted Bryan with them. Like I looked, now I have my, the folks I look to anytime Bryan runs the fire. There's a handful, there's, the fan club. I had a fan club. Now I'm the fan. I'm a fanboy of all the captains that run fires. But, I still get the awesome feeling of listening to you guys, make it happen, do great work. And, hopefully I'll see you out there this summer, bro.
Well, to coin a phrase from Frank Ritchie, we're at the witching hour.
We're at the witching hour.
So, Bryan, I know you were busy doing it down there at 2. Got on a little late, but it was a good conversation. Appreciate you taking the time, and that you didn't run a call while we were actually on here recording. So that's a good thing. And so I appreciate you coming on and giving us that view from the company officer standpoint and what it's like to have to go to stations, to be the new guy, to be the float guy, and being able to tackle issues and stick to your principles, with what what's right and what's wrong, and not letting anybody kind of taking you down the rabbit hole of what's wrong, and they're doing the wrong thing. So do the right thing all the time, whether people are watching or not. So with that,
Hey,
fellas,
thanks for having me, guys.
another good show.
Yep.
And other than that,
Absolutely.
be safe.